With the top assembly of the miter saw workstation essentially built, other than the details, it's time to start building the pedestal bases for the workstation. Now again, remember, the key to this design is flexibility. You have the flexibility of building just the top and mounting it on anything you want to in your shop. You could even permanently mount it against the wall if you wanted to. But if you want to build pedestal bases for it, you still have a lot of options. Everything in my shop is mobile, so this is on wheels, but you could build a base with a toe kick area and have it as a more permanent setup. You could make these a little narrower, a little wider. You could configure the storage that these two pedestal bases give you any variety of ways. You could put doors on it, make cabinets. You could put drawers in it. I chose to do a couple little different things here for very specific reasons of storage in my shop. But as we go through this, I'll show you different ways that you could do this. A couple of caveats in the construction. Notice that there's an area in the middle here that's not used. You may be tempted to build a full-size base underneath. What I've found in the past, though, is that it's restrictive from the standpoint of working in front of the saw. I like to think of it as a little leg space underneath there. I find it very comfortable to work this way. And as we go through the details later, you'll see that there's a little trick here with this saw. It can actually be moved back into a rearward position for cross-cutting wider material. When you do that, you're definitely going to be under the saw table, and cabinet space there, you'd be bumping your toes or your knees, one or the other. The other thing to remember is to make the depth of the pedestal bases exactly the same as the width of your top. That way everything will line up and it'll be easy to fasten it together when you get finished. The only other caveat that I have is let your imagination go wild and do whatever works best in your shop. Height is an important consideration, and just one quick note about that. If you've been using your miter saw and you're happy with the height at its current setup in your shop, go with that height. If you're not sure, do some experimentation. You could set up some sawhorses and put some 2x6s and then start to shim the saw at different heights until you get it the way you want it to be that's perfect for your style of work. I happen to like to bend down and sight along the blade to line up my cut mark, and this height is just high enough to do that. But there's compromises in everything. If you get it too high, it's going to be cumbersome putting work up on top of it all the time. If you get it too low, you're going to get an aching back sighting along that saw blade. So get a height that works for you, and then build your cabinets so that it brings everything up to the height that's perfect for you. The pedestal bases are very straightforward, just like any other cabinets that I've built in the shop. And again, there's detailed videos that you can go and check on my YouTube site on how I build these base cabinets. Just as a quick review, I always build these with 2 sheets of plywood at the bottom. This side and this side over here have basically 1.5 inches wide rabbet cut in them, and then 2 sheets of plywood doubled up here on the bottom. I do that because my cabinets in my shop get moved a lot, and even though I use good quality casters, those good quality casters have to be solidly mounted or eventually they'll come loose and create a problem for you. Then in this particular cabinet, I set 2 vertical uprights, also in dados, to offer a great deal of weight support and rigidity to this unit. The back is 1/2 inch plywood, just like the top. And of course these two internal pieces would be cut a ½ inch shorter to accommodate the back so it's fully inset. Once the cabinet is built, the casters are installed, I face the edges with poplar, just exactly the same as on the top, and finished it, put some finish on it. The left side pedestal base is essentially the same as the right hand side, except there's no vertical divider in here. First of all, the unit is relatively narrow, so from a weight standpoint, not a concern. Still, again, 2 layers of 3/4 inch plywood on the bottom to give rigidity for the casters. The 2 sides set into rabbets in the top and the bottom, and a ½ inch back glued in. Very simple, very straightforward. Now, let's get to some of the details. When I was first noodling out the design of this miter saw station, I was trying to figure out what to put on this side. Then one morning I was having a cup of coffee, it was very early in the morning, and I was sitting and I was looking at this big stack of Festool Systainers over in the corner, and I said, man, you know, the one I want's always the second one from the bottom, and it's taking up space over there. This would be great if I could figure out a way to mount some kind of slide out tray and put my Festool Systainers in there. Now, you remember at the first of the video I said I used ½ inch for the backs because I needed the extra space, and the reason is because I wanted these to not overlap the trim, and I wanted 2 of them to fit front and back, and that's exactly the way I made this. So I've got 2 here, room for 2, I've only got 1 in here right now, and 2 of the super-sized large Systainers down here. So a total of 6 Systainers are stored. Again, these are 3/4 inch chunks of plywood with poplar on the face, and I used really inexpensive drawer slides. And the reason that I use these is because they mount on the bottom side of the drawer and they're thin. So the 3/4 inch plywood and these drawer slides work just perfect. They extend out plenty far because you can take out the first Systainer and get to the one behind it, and they seem to work pretty good. So after I got those installed and dressed the front of the shelves and put my Systainers in, I put some little handles on here that are surface mount. Now obviously, unlike a drawer pull, which is mounted from behind, I couldn't get in here to mount this from behind, so I use these surface mount pulls that sort of look like the other pulls in my shop. At least they're made out of the same oak. So that worked out pretty good. The only other thing that might be interesting for you is how to space out the drawer slides themselves, and I figured out a really simple way to do that. I mounted the first one as close to the bottom as I could get it and lined up with the floor of the cabinet, so I knew I got that one nice and straight, and that worked out just fine. So then I loaded in the Systainers. I put a small spacer on either side and used that to position the next drawer slide. Once I got those in, I put 2 Systainers up here, small spacer, and put in the top one. Worked out just fine. On the right-hand side pedestal, which is the larger of the pedestals, I had decided that I wanted to have a place to put all my little cut-offs and scraps. So often I use this stuff, but it's always a hassle digging through piles to find just the right size. So I thought if I had little cubby holes over here where I could sort it out, maybe by lumber type or by thickness or by width, however it makes sense, that would work pretty good for me. The question was, what sizes did I need? So what I ultimately decided to do was to make shelves, and again this is just 3/4 inch plywood with the dress face with some poplar on it to hide the cores of the plywood, and I drilled shelf pin holes starting about right here all the way up to about right here in all of these sides.
Then I used just regular shelf pins, and these are 1/4 inch, and they're just plastic shelf pins. You could use metal if you feel like that's going to be better for you. And put those in place and kind of figured out where I wanted them. And then all you got to do is put these shelves in. It'd be helpful if I got that at the right spot. And got a nice sturdy shelf. Now, drilling these holes after the cabinet was built made sense for me. These vertical support components are in dados, and I could have drilled those beforehand, but I wanted to make absolutely certain that everything was level. And if this dado was a smidge deeper or this one was a smidge more shallow, it could throw off the height of these, and I just didn't want to take a chance on that. So I decided to drill the holes afterwards. Unfortunately, there's very little space in here. I wound up using a Kreg, K-R-E-G, Kreg shelf pin hole drilling jig. Try saying that 3 times real fast. And it worked like a champ. I also got a chance to use the right angle attachment on my new Festool CXS drill, the little mini drill, and that worked really good. So after I got the holes drilled, I was able to mount these shelves. I made 6 of the shelves. I can always make others if I need to. But I kind of like this little larger section over here to put some plywood into. But I'll adjust this to fit as needed, and I will split things up according to wood type or dimensionally, and that way it'll make it a lot easier for me to find stuff. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.